You are live.
Good evening. Welcome to the Finance Board meeting for April 10th, 2024. Call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. We called this meeting because it was brought to our attention that there was an adjustment needed on the omnibus budget due to a clerical error that was identified during a final check and balance procedure in preparing for the warrant to be posted on Monday. Rebecca, do you want to go through what we found and then what our proposed changes are to adjust for that?
Yes, thank you. So it was found when we were doing another checks on the budget that on the revenue side, you'll see that we list a transfer from other funds, and that is the transfer from the fee receipt account for the Conservation Commission and the agent salary line item. So that's listed in the revenue portion as $8,771, but you'll also see that that's not at net expense anywhere. So it makes it appear that we have an additional $8,771 to go towards the budget, which is not correct. That is an added expenditure that will come from another portion of funds. So that needed to be reduced, so we would be $8,771 in the red. So that adjustment has been made. Therefore, I needed to go back into the budget and find the $8,771 in order to make sure that we balance. So essentially, trying to maintain all of the conversations that we've had and to make sure that the departments were made whole as we had gone through the process originally. The line items that the monies were removed from was from the legal line item, so we reduced that by $3,400. And then the technology line item, we reduced that by $1,500. And then the other items were underneath the cemetery budget. We had had conversations about how the combination of the cemetery division underneath the highway division didn't require us to increase those funds. But we did allow some of them to be increased slightly, so we just reduced some of those line items, making them level funded. So $300 from one line item, $800 from another line item, $1,000, but all throughout that particular budget. So that gives us our total, and we have $27 remaining in the black. So no employee positions were touched, no other departments were touched. It was only technology, legal, and then the cemetery budget, which we were trying to leave as is, but with the recent combination, it made sense that that would be the least amount of impact to any of the departments.
What was the amount reduced on the cemetery budget?
$8,771.
On the cemetery.
Oh, on the cemetery? Oh.
$2,500, I think, Rebecca?
So budgeted for yeah, 7,274 from last fiscal year. Or do you mean was the question that reduced from where we had it originally?
Yeah.
And I need to go to a different spreadsheet. Oh, I can just do this.
just highlight them, I'll give you the total then.
Oh.
$3,100.
Yes, $3,100. Sorry, my cells were not. Clicked on one and another one highlighted.
Okay. Service levels won't be impacted, right?
No, they shouldn't be, because, again, now that they have the resources from the highway division, the utilities line, there's nobody up at that office anymore. They're located here in this office. The supplies line item, the paper they get from the town hall, we have our supplies closet that they have paper clips and all those other things, so the supply line item shouldn't be an issue. So it wasn't from their landscaping, that we would remain the same, and it wasn't from their part-time help or anything of that nature. It was just from their expenses, supplies, and utilities.
Can I ask a slightly unrelated question? Is this how this is going to appear in the warrant? I'm wondering if approved would recommended be a
can do
more
that.
appropriate word? Just if you think that's, because
I can do that. That would be very simple. So the,
and if you think it's appropriate.
so the only thing that, yes, definitely, that's very much appropriate. And the way that it'll appear in the warrant is Article 35 has your categories, so it'll have general government, public safety, education, et cetera. And then the line item budget may be found in Appendix B. So you'll look in Appendix B and it'll give you the actual line items so that we can make sure that we're sticking to our line items that we have identified as part of the budgeting process. But I can change recommended.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Maybe Bill should get a little synopsis of why we're here. No? No.
I mean, if the board wants, we can, I've been trying to honor the fact that the board was, reluctant to decrease the reserve account. So we could take the 3,000 from the reserve account that's taken from the cemetery budget and wouldn't impact the cemetery budget at all if the board wanted to do that. I know that it was not something that the board wanted to do to reduce it to the 10,000 that it was. So, I mean, if that's what the board would like to entertain, is to look at other ways to find that other 3,000, but it was something that, again, I took into consideration what departments and the cuts and the level funded line items we already had in play, and also the combination of resources where others are trying to, work together to minimize their own costs and level fund those line items, and that was the one department that we didn't really touch. We left it the same, so I just felt as though with the consolidation of resources, it made the most sense. While not ideal, no, there wouldn't be as much of an impact, but the board's welcome to discuss that further, obviously. I just making a recommendation to the board.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm not extremely comfortable reducing the reserve amount even more than we've already reduced it.
Right, we reduced it from 30,000 to 10,000. If we had reduced it from 30,000 to 20,000, maybe it would still be a reasonable source,
Right.
but I think anything less than 10 is just an uncomfortable place to be, especially if you think that those other expenses can be absorbed and handled. Then I would follow the recommendation. My feeling.
Looks good to me.
Is Bill up to
I
speed?
gave you the high level.
50,000-foot view, yeah, but I see it is what it is.
I mean, I also don't like, lowering, like, legal and, those types of expenses as well. But again, I'm not comfortable lowering the reserve because, I mean, that's kind of like that
What would be the difference in the reserve? If we took it out of there?
So the reserve fund in fiscal year 2024 is budgeted at $30,000, and what we recommended for fiscal year '25 was $10,000.
So it would leave us with like 6 or 7 thousand.
In lieu of what you were recommending? I think we go with what you reduce the expenses, my personal opinion.
I mean, one of the things too that's really comforting with the reserve is knowing that if the money is not utilized, it can be utilized for those expenses where we did find ourselves in a tricky situation, and whereas if we reduce that further and put it in line items that might be utilized, that monies will not be available to be utilized at year-end transfers for those types of line items that are very, very tight. So $300 from a line item from one person is not as huge a huge difference as 3,000 from the reserve that could cover that $300 need at the end of the year. Whereas, you know, somebody might just automatically spend it and, oh, well, that was my budget, so I spent it. So it does give the board a little bit more control, not necessarily in a controlling way, but a little bit more, less anxiety, if you will, as to year end and, you know, how the year will shape up. And I do sincerely apologize for making the error. Something didn't sit right with me, and I kept on, you know, going to the town accountant and saying, something just doesn't feel right, something doesn't feel right. And then when we put it in the tax recap sheet, just as the triple check, it was found that we did not net it accordingly, or that I did not net it accordingly. So I do apologize. It was not my intent at all.
I think "we" is a fair word. I'm going to say that this was a group effort.
Yeah, we all missed it.
Good catch, thank you.
The answer is,
So I think we're good. I don't think anyone has any objections to the recommendations.
No, I mean, if that's what you believe is the best sources for those budgetary kind of movements. Well, I don't think anybody's closer to the subject than the two of you are, so I have to trust your judgment as I've trusted it in the past.
So I will make a motion that we recommend favorable action on the revisions as summarized in the document presented us tonight with the omnibus figures.
And then that would leave total expenditures, Rebecca, if you can just confirm the number that I give you, $23,378,479.22.
I think we rounded.
Okay, so 479.
Yes.
That works for me. Pennies out.
Put in a quarter and we'll be even.
Right, that's what I have. Please don't mess with me. Yes, okay. 1, 2, 3. I'll do it again later.
So I made the motion. Is there a,
I
So I'll
can-
second that motion.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
You want to do the article?
So we already voted on the article for the warrant. I think this can, do we want to, I mean, your motion was to move favorable, which is in line with the article.
Oh, I
Oh,
meant,
the other item,
yeah,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay, sorry, I forgot. One other warrant article that did come up after our meeting was related to a stipend to the treasurer collector, should they meet the requirements to sit for the examination and pass the examination test. She's not eligible to sit for it now, but it was something, I think Rebecca, you explained to the Board of Selectmen that it was an item that the, was it the consultant, or? We thought it was already in existence, but that it was in someone's contract previously. The current treasurer collector is not contracted, so there is no stipend for obtaining that certification, which obviously, as a professional certification, that would be something that we would want an employee to strive for obtaining. So there was a warrant article proposed for a stipend up to $1,000.
And that's to invoke Massachusetts general law, which would allow us to provide that stipends for that specific certification, whether it be the treasurer or the collector, because there's two separate exams as well.
And that's something that was in place for similar employees in the past? you're
So
saying?
the former treasurer collector had a contract, because she was also the finance director, so it was, she was given that as part of her contract, and so when we went back and forth, we wanted to verify whether or not the town had adopted that statute, which would give us the ability to do so, and we were struggling to find that, because we didn't know if it was the contract or if it was the statute, and then it was determined that the town clerk said we did not adopt that statute. So this is just adopting the statute that will allow us to move forward with that in the future as a policy, that up to $1,000 of a stipend would be granted if they pass the exams, because there's two.
And that's standard for the industry, standard for our organization? Do we do that for other similar roles, or is that,
This
is
one
there not a
spec-
comparison for that?
So West Newbury was actually the one who just did it last fiscal year, so they just adopted this statute as well. There's, I mean, practice, we could definitely, from a human resources standpoint, offer individuals stipends, or, you know, individual, like, incentivize them to get their certifications. But this one is, again, governed under Massachusetts general law, so it's a slightly different than just, you know, you're certified as a procurement officer. Like, I wouldn't get any extra money for being a certified procurement agent, but obviously, if you had that role, you would want to incentivize somebody to do so. But there's no Massachusetts general law that says that you can get a stipend for being certified. So that's the only difference with this. So we do try and incentivize our employees to get their certifications, and we do pay for all of their classes, and we do pay for them to go and get their certifications, which is a benefit to them as well, because that makes them, you know, more marketable if they were looking around elsewhere. But to keep them, and after we paid for those things, we should be trying to work towards that. But to answer your question in a very roundabout way, this one is more Massachusetts general law adoption rather than human resource practice.
So it is Mass General Law, and whether we adopt that or not is what we're talking about? Why wouldn't we not adopt a Mass General Law practice?
Just like some of the other ones that are on the warrant, like the fiscal prudent, the prudent investment rule, that's the Massachusetts general law, that you have to adopt the provisions that allow you to do that. And so just like with the adopting of the provisions to allow for the abandoned tailings and funds that we talked about, so you're adopting a statute that allows for you to give the treasurer a stipend. I mean, I guess in the long run, I would need to do more research and seeing why we couldn't offer her one without invoking it, but she had requested to see if we could move in that direction, and it was a kind of like an incentive for her to, you know, move on that course, and it just seemed like general practice, and West Newbury was doing it. Not to say that's the right thing to do, but it wasn't like we were the only ones not moving in that direction, so that's kind of why we brought it forward, but we can definitely do more research on it.
No,
too.
no, no, I'm just sort of, it's just a new topic of conversation, so I'm just trying to understand a little bit. The Board of Selectmen already voted on this?
They did.
What was their vote?
They voted favorable recommendation. And again, my sincerest apologies, it was not to not be transparent about the process, but I was still waiting for confirmation that we had not in fact adopted it already.
Right.
And I received the correspondence a little too late in terms of the meeting with the finance board.
Well, here we are. Good enough. Very good. question?
I'll make the motion to recommend favorable action for this. Is
I'll second. I'm always for smarter people.
there any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, Rebecca, I think that's everything.
What number is that, warrant article? Or you can just follow up and let me know, I just want to make sure I reference it. I'll look at the warrant, that's fine.
I think it's number 5.
Okay, I'll look at the warrant to confirm that for my minutes is all.
And I should have that all drafted and ready to go. The Board of Selectmen is meeting tomorrow to address the budget issue at a remote meeting. Once they approve, then we'll be able to update the budget in the warrant, which was my biggest fear, is that it was not going to be accurate. So that will be done, and we will be having that posted on Friday. So I will send the posted warrant to the chair to distribute to the board on Friday so that you all have a copy of that.
Your fear, are you feeling more confident now? Are you more comfortable, or?
Not at all.
Not yet?
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and, you know, when she called yesterday to say, you know, we found this, and, you know, I said, we're human. I mean,
I remember
can-
one time we had to renumber the articles, so, I mean, the last minute thing. This was, if it was 80,000, we'd be in trouble, but I'm not concerned about it.
It was just sad news that $8,000 was so hard to find.
It's always the little numbers that are hard to find, right? When you're looking, when you're off $1 million or $2 million,
Oh, no, I mean that it was hard
but
to
like, to
to
take it
cut
off.
another
Oh,
8,000, that our budget is that.
well, oh, there, yeah, for sure.
But yes, I agree, the little numbers are hard to find.
Great. Thank you. And I think that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn at 5:24.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.